Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author, and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Today I will be reviewing The Land of Night by Kirby. This is the third book in the Scarlet and the White Wolf series. The description says, struggling to come to terms with his new life in Roshan Astra, young Scarlet is trying to find his place in a decadent, foreign society that bears an ancient hatred for all Halurin. As Lial is pulled away from Scarlet and into the jaded intrigues of a royal court, the young peddler wonders if they've made a terrible mistake in journeying to Roshan. Each passing day, Lial seems more like a stranger, more like one of the haughty Roshani nobility, and less like the bandit leader Scarlet knew in Byzanter. As Lial contends with the aristocracy to uphold his 14-year-old brother's claim to the throne, an infinitely more dangerous enemy draws nearer, determined to part the lovers forever. As I said in my previous video, if you have not read these books yourself, be warned that this review may contain spoilers for the previous installments. I once again gave this book 4 stars. I enjoyed it more than Mariner's Luck. That being said, I do want to be fair in these reviews. I gave a book I hated shit for poor editing, so I also have to state that here. The Land of Night was riddled with sentences that were missing words, had extra words thrown in, or had words transposed so that the sentences were difficult to read. It wasn't so common as to be intolerable, but it was more common than can really be excused. This needed better editing. Also, I nearly DNF'd this one. I said in my Mariner's Luck review that Lial constantly calling Scarlet a child was making me uncomfortable, but at the start of The Land of Night, it got significantly worse. Not only was Lial still calling Scarlet a child every time they had an argument, he was also keeping him a virtual prisoner in their apartments and blatantly refused to tell him anything about anything. It was absolutely infuriating. Luckily, it got better just before I'd had enough. A combination of events forces Scarlet to have to leave their apartments, and things begin to set in motion. Also, Scarlet makes Lial feel bad for locking him up and leaving him alone most of the time, so he stupidly agrees to let Scarlet go on a bear hunt. For the previous 2 installments, despite enjoying them, I said they didn't have much going on in terms of plot. This did not suffer from that problem. There were quite a few things that happened throughout the course of this book that really kept me engaged once we got past the beginning. One of those things was a proper introduction to Prince Sestamir, Lial's younger half-brother, who has my whole heart. Whatever I may say about the plots or endings, I like the way Crow crafts her characters. Speaking of endings, I thought the end of this book was quite an improvement over the previous 2. It came at a solid ending point, and the narration felt like a proper conclusion. Arguably, this could have been an ending to the series as well. Not the best ending, but an ending. I think Crow may have intended it to be when she wrote it. It's hard to say. It is good that this can serve as an ending, however, because I DNF'd the 4th book. I'll get into the reasons why at the end of this video, if you're curious, but those are spoilers galore. I'm not sure what else to say without spoilers, so I'll end the spoiler-free section there. If you don't want any spoilers for this book, now is the time to pause or close the video. For everyone else, let's talk details. There were a couple of minor things that grated on me in this book. At some point, Scarlet finds a gift that has been left on a table in their apartments. He opens it to find a pin in the shape of a wolf. There is some question as to who this gift is from, and Scarlet assumes it is Lial because his name translates to wolf in Byzan, something that has not been previously stated, by the way. The logic tracks, but based on the amount of time we spent on this scene, I expected him to be wrong. I kept waiting to see what would happen with the pin, only to have Lial confirm very near the climax that he has been leaving gifts there. So I guess it was from him. This confirmation comes when someone leaves a box containing a poisonous snake, where Lial has been leaving gifts, something that has no purpose in this book. Perhaps it does in the next, but I will never know. Also, Scarlet meets with a tailor early on to be measured and pick out fabrics. The very last thing he is shown is fine leather to make a coat. He asks the tailor to replicate his peddler's coat, which is quite worn at this point, but which is a mark of his trade and is important to Scarlet. The tailor agrees to do this, but this new coat is never mentioned again. This may also come in later in the series, but there was enough time that passed in this book that it seemed like it should have been ready. The last minor gripe I have is that Crow says repeatedly that Scarlet is good with languages. He seems to speak at least 3 already, but for some reason he is incapable of learning the Roshani language. At first I thought this was just a temporary thing, that he was struggling with it, but that once he set to studying it seriously, he would master it quickly. I thought that he and Lial would then work together, keeping the fact that Scarlet understands the language secret, so that people would speak in front of Scarlet, and he could help Lial find ways to sway their opinion. That's what Lial is there to do, after all, convince the barons to support Sestamir as king, with Lial serving as regent until he comes of age. But no, Scarlet just can't grasp the language. Even with deliberate study, even in the next book, which seems to be a few months later, he cannot speak the language at all and can barely understand any of it. The big complaints are that Lial is a damn hypocrite, and he never even really explains himself. As expected, one of his enemies, though not the one I expected, eventually tells Scarlet that Lial murdered his older brother. He also told him the thing I'd forgotten, which is that Scarlet's court title, Caris Cur Nazaridae, basically means that he belongs to Lial. Nazaridae being Lial's actual name, Caris being the approximate equivalent of Scarlet in their language, and Cur denoting ownership. Which are both things Scarlet has asked both Lial and others about, but that Lial has adamantly refused to tell him. Then he finds out immediately after that Scarlet can do magic, and he's pissed that Scarlet kept it from him. Worse still, Scarlet apologizes for keeping it from Lial, despite the fact that his people keep their magic secret both as protection and as a facet of their religion, and he therefore had every reason not to tell Lial, even if he loved him. As opposed to Lial, who kept every secret he kept because he didn't want Scarlet to get mad at him. They don't ever actually address the fact that he's been claiming ownership of Scarlet the entire time, something Scarlet made very clear in Mariner's Luck was not okay, and hiding it from Scarlet. He does give Scarlet the whole story about his brother, but Scarlet isn't even upset that he killed him, just that he refused to tell him, so even on that end, there's not really any resolution. We also kind of get a genre shift in this book, and I really wish fantasy authors would stop doing this. If you want to write a fantasy, write a fantasy. If you want to write a sci-fi, write a sci-fi. Don't write a fantasy and then surprise readers with a sci-fi twist. This is at least the 3rd series I've had this happen in, and I'm sick of it. For those watching this without reading, Scarlet is kidnapped at the end of the book by one of the Ancients. The Ancients are a sort of half-step between the Shining Ones and the Roshani in the evolutionary line. The story goes that the immortal Shining Ones were kidnapping and abusing the Anlirabeth, the Hiloran ancestors, and so the Anlirabeth stole their magic and made them mortal. So this Ancient has plotted with the bad guy to get his hands on Scarlet so he can find out where they hid something. The Ancient's plan kind of backfires, and Scarlet gets an audience with his ancestors, in which one of them sets the record straight. Once upon a time, both the Shining Ones and the Anlirabeth sailed on a sentient ship. A spaceship, as far as I can tell. The Shining Ones were just too damn big to handle gravity, but the Anlirabeth were smaller, so they were okay. The Shining Ones then used some kind of psychic connection to enslave the Anlirabeth to their will to serve them. Eventually, one of the Shining Ones, or possibly by that point a Roshani, I don't remember for sure, was in love with his Anlirabeth mind slave and didn't do the enslaving part, treating him well. But that Anlirabeth couldn't bear to see his people enslaved, so eventually he freed the ship's sentients, Deva, and his people. He stole something called the Creatrix and used it to basically teleport the Anlirabeth across the sea. So yeah, it's a genre shift. I hate genre shifts. I came here for a fantasy, don't give me sci-fi. But this is not why I DNF'd the next book. So why did I? I have a rule. It's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not. This is the 10-year rule, which states that any book in a series written 10 or more years after the previous installment will probably be bad. This is not necessarily because the author will have changed and grown as a writer, and so the tone and writing will be different, although that can be a factor. Really, what the 10-year rule warns against is the fact that authors never seem willing to read their own work. So 10 years on, they probably forgot some details. For a person reading without that gap, though, the details are fresh and the contradictions glaring. The worst offender for this, and possibly the one that created the 10-year rule, was the fourth book in the Darksword trilogy. In that one, the authors forgot they killed an entire character. The only other one I can remember is Ender in Exile. Orson Scott Card has terrible politics, and I don't recommend giving him money because I know what he does with it. But I read the Ender series before I knew that, and Ender's Game is one of my favorite books. But Ender in Exile takes place directly after Ender's Game, and it came out way later. That book decided to retcon the name of an entire species. I understand the reason for this, but at that point, Card had written what he'd written, and clumsily retconning it didn't make it better, it made it worse. Anyway, The King of Forever didn't come out 10 years after The Land of Night. It was only 8. Either I need to revise my rule, or Crow is just particularly bad with details. I got through 17% of The King of Forever, and it had half a dozen continuity mistakes. Though, to be fair, several of these mistakes may be more a matter of opinion. I'll run through each that I clocked in case you're strangely curious. First, Scarlet asks Lial if the Shining Ones really came from Rashan. This question makes no sense, given the explanation he received at the end of the last book. He knows that they did not originally come from Rashan, but that as far as the planet is concerned, they did. In the previous book, when we were introduced to Prince Sestamir, we were also introduced to his bodyguard, a man named Alexian. Alexian didn't have a large role in the book, but he still had a decent presence, and one of the few things he did say was that he thinks Scarlet is smart. When Scarlet tells Lial this later, Lial remarks that Alexian calling him smart carries a lot of weight. In general, Alexian seemed like a very reasonable man and seemed to like Scarlet. But Scarlet was kidnapped alongside Sestamir at the end of the last book, and only one of them made it out alive. The circumstances surrounding the two being kidnapped were entirely Sestamir's fault. He wanted to sneak out for a sleigh ride, and he convinces Scarlet to come with him. The only thing Scarlet could have done differently would have been to not go, which would not have saved Sestamir. In fact, since the sleigh nearly went over a cliff and they only got out safely because Scarlet knew what to do, he would have died a much messier death. Alternately, he would have gotten out and not been able to see well enough in the dark to get home before he froze to death. Hiloran can see in the dark, so Scarlet guided them. The absolute best-case scenario without Scarlet is that Sestamir gets kidnapped by the bad guy, he's just alone when it happens. I would accept Alexian being uncomfortable with Scarlet at this point because Scarlet survived and Sestamir didn't, and that is extremely painful for Alexian, who cared deeply for Sestamir. But he isn't just uncomfortable with Scarlet, he seems to hate him. He very strongly seems to blame Scarlet, even though, again, Scarlet could not have done anything different that would have saved Sestamir. Well, magic, but we'll ignore that because Crow sure did. I would usually chalk this major shift in character up to regular old character assassination. It happens. But given all the other stuff, I think Crow forgot how she had presented Alexian in the Land of Night and made him overly angry in this one to cause problems. Leal says something to Scarlet about hating sailing because he's not in control. In Mariner's Luck, he said he had sailed often and that it felt good standing on board a ship again. In the last book, Leal saw someone or something that had been shot with arrows and thought to himself that it was another danger Scarlet was not prepared to face. He says specifically that the bow is considered a coward's weapon in Bizen and that Scarlet has probably never even seen one. But in this book, Scarlet owns a bow, named Whisper, and is an excellent marksman with it. Hunting with a bow is treated as something he has done all his life, despite the only previous mention being that he would not have known how to do this. In the Land of Night, after Leal's secrets are revealed to Scarlet, Sestamir is trying to calm Scarlet down and offers him a glass of wine, which Scarlet pushes away and Sestamir drops. Vlade, the bad guy, then grabs Scarlet's wrist, accusing him of assaulting the prince. Scarlet responds to this by using his fire magic to make Vlade let go. The entire court's immediate reaction to Scarlet doing magic is to call for his death. This is just before the climax, so he passes out from, we'll call it a concussion to save time, and then he and Sestamir sneak out. I also said before that the Heloran do not share the fact that they can do magic, both as a matter of safety and as part of their religion. So when Scarlet sees the first green sprouting on a tree and decides he wants to help it along with his magic, it seemed completely out of character for him to draw another Roshani's attention before doing so. The last we heard, Scarlet's magic was somewhat sacred and extremely ill-favored among the Roshani, but now he's just showing it off willy-nilly. Oh, and the person he's showing it off to is a man named Tesk. We were introduced to him briefly in the previous book. He's an artist, and every time he's around Scarlet, he seems a bit flirty. Leal is actively jealous when he sees this man talking to Scarlet, and wants to do him bodily harm. So it seemed really weird that in this book, he has arranged for Tesk to be able to keep an eye on Scarlet while he's out hunting. Call me crazy, but I wouldn't expect someone exceedingly jealous to arrange for his lover to spend more time with the guy he despises. With all that piling up very quickly, I decided I'd had enough. If Crow can't be bothered to care about her own books, why should I? So I DNF'd the book and the series. Disappointing, but I've got better things to read. Anyway, if you like this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!